Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft Office Add-ins community call. My name is David Chesnut, your host for this call. Let's take a look at our presenters and agenda for today. So joining us today is Chris Gross, who's going to be talking about the Excel data type APIs. Also joining us is Phoebe Wan, who's going to be sharing some Word API updates. And then Juan Valmari is joining us to talk about the Outlook add-ins and the Outlook REST v2 decommission, which I know has been a popular request in recent months on the community call, so it'll be exciting to see what he has to share. A few quick notes before we get started. The call is being recorded and we'll post it to our YouTube community channel within about 24 hours after the call concludes. Also, if you have any questions as we go along, please type them into the chat and presenters will answer those as they go along, or perhaps shortly after their presentation is concluded. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started with Chris. And Chris, if you want to just take over the presentation, feel free to get started.
All right, sounds good. Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Gross, an Excel program manager. So I'll be talking to you guys today about data type APIs as promised. So I'm going to share my screen here and then get things kicked off. Got about 15 minutes and I've got more content than I could possibly get through. So I'll try to do this in an expedited version. And of course, always happy to answer questions afterwards in the chat. I'll be talking to you all about data types. The first thing to kind of mention is just the journey that the Excel team's been on in regard to data types. So historically speaking, Excel's supported what we now call a number of basic values, and those have been things that you're probably familiar with, like text strings, numbers, booleans, and then there's a formatting layer on top of that. And the entire world has been running and businesses operating off of all of these formulae that make use of these basic data types. But on the team, we've been thinking about what it means to support a future where the grid can extend itself and understand much more than that. And so that's where the journey of data types has come in. And so along the way, we've been, if you've been following the product for the past couple of years, we've been adding a number of data sources as we build out our architecture. We started out with geography and stocks, as you can see cards for here. Then recently we penned a deal with Wolfram and we've been able to provide data from them. And so this is, on one hand, been able to allow us to extend our architecture deeply and add more rich support for all of the experiences that you can find today, while also offering a wider domain of data. And then, of course, it wasn't enough to just have our own data sources. We started on the journey recently of adding your all's data sources too. And so if you have Power BI, you can hook that in through what we call organizational data. And then there's also the ability for Power Query. But really, we've been missing something, and it's been something that we've been excited to release and announce, and we did announce it last Ignite, and that's the ability for you all to kind of extend the heart of all of these structures and make your own without having to use something like Power Query or Power BI or integrate or pen a deal with us on the team and integrate with our large service architecture. So the next thing I want to cover real quick is just a bit of the anatomy about data types, because I'll use some terms today just loosely, and that's because I breathe this stuff every single day and I'm constantly talking about it, but it might be something that you're not familiar with. So if I use a term, these are generally what they mean. So the first thing is when you look at a data type, and specifically these are called entity values in the grid, you'll notice that they have an icon and then some display text. These are things that you can extend, and we'll get more to that in a little bit later. And then the other main surface area that users are interacting with is what we call the card. Probably a little bit self-explanatory of a name, but it's worth at least calling out. Now, within those cards, you might be able to notice that there's a whole bunch of information contained with them, or metadata. And so we call these things fields and field values. And these are really, again, part of what's important to Excel, because it's awesome that I can have a card, but when you're an end user, you're probably going to want to make use of this within the grid so that you can do your own analysis. So we have a number of ways that you can actually extract that data as an end user and get it to the grid, whether that be through the on-object UI that you can see here, or you can write your own formulas with something we call dot notation. And that's not, the only supported things. We also have deep support and integration with many of the feature sets. So right here, what you're seeing is kind of a quick example of our ability to have sort and filtering functionality that's just baked into the product. And if you create an entity value, it's just generally supported within those infrastructures too. Now, some of you might be wondering why we're doing this, and I explained a little bit about that, but one of the major reasons is, and the impetus for it is about increasing developer velocity. We saw a number of patterns over the years of things that folks are trying to do either through the spreadsheets themselves or building add-ins to do. And so we wanted to allow the ability to kind of get the job done a little bit faster. And so if you're thinking about making use of these APIs, it's rather simple to do. All you need to do is you need to, for example, if you have a REST API, you can return a JSON structure. And then we have a documented schema. And if you apply that schema to your data, then all you have to do is set those values and pass them into the grid. And it's really as simple as that. And I'll show a few examples today that kind of show a little bit about how that works. Now, it's also important to talk about the different building blocks that are exposed, because I certainly talked a lot about that entity value structure because that's kind of the main one that comes top of mind when you think about data types. But we've also added support for a number of different other composable building blocks that we've built along the way that support all these experiences. So I mentioned entity values, which is kind of that object-like structure. But within that, you might have certain scenarios where you've got a number and you want a format supported with it. So you might have something that's a date, and when you extract that to the grid, you actually want to show that as a date. Today, if you don't use these new objects called formatted number values, you traditionally do that by setting a format on the cell. But these are a little different because that format is actually associated with the value itself, and so it can travel through calc. It can also help with reducing errors too, because those values themselves have an opinion on how they want to be formatted, which means that we can trigger things like green arrows if somebody, say, formats a dollar amount as a date when they didn't mean to. Images inside the grid are another thing that we've added support for. So we've always had the ability to have stuff floating on the grid, but within those entity values, you might have noticed that there were images inside of there. And so these images can live on their own or inside of these entity values. And that's true of any of these things. They can all be composable within each other as it makes sense. The next one is improved errors. So everybody's probably familiar with the years where all we really had was 90% of the errors you got were pound value, and that wasn't very descriptive. We have a whole bunch of new errors that have been introduced with data types, and so we've added support for extending those and making use of them, as well as kind of the experience you can see here, where sometimes we can add different interactions that a user can take so that they can quickly fix that error a little bit easier. And the last one on my list today is arrays and entities. So within those entity values, we've also added support for arrays in the grid in the past. And so inside of an entity value, you can actually have array structures. So you can see an example here where I've got an array of years and the table that gets automatically generated in that card view that's associated with it. And of course, I can pull that into the grid too. So just a little bit about the APIs. If you're interested in the stuff I'm talking about today, what you're going to want to do is go research the values as JSON API. This is very much like range.values if you've used it before, except the only difference is that it returns augmented information about the historical values, but it also has support for these new data types. So in this example on the bottom, you can see if before I was writing something that had one and then the term llama because I couldn't actually put an image of a llama in the cell, well, now I can do that, or I could add my own structure too if I wanted. And really, this allows you to get and set values within the grid, just like range.values always has. A little bit about the schema, because it would be amiss to not at least touch base on that to give you kind of an idea of how it works. They have a schema, and JSON's the format, probably as implied from the API name. The main thing that drives a lot of these definitions is what we call the type field. And so within that, we've added enumeration where you can actually go and quickly access and see the different types of type values you can set. So here you can see we've got those objects I talked about before of web image, formatted number values, and then entities. And then, of course, there's special properties that go with each of those, but I certainly don't have enough time today to talk about all of those, but I'll show a quick demo of some new ones we've introduced. So if you're interested in learning more, I would highly suggest checking out the link up above, aka.ms/datatypedev, if you're interested in learning more. Now, the next thing to talk about is custom functions. As I mentioned, kind of the heart and soul of Excel is its formula language. It's something that everyone makes use of every single day when they want to do their analysis. And you all are probably familiar with custom functions and their ability to be extended. Well, all those data types that I showed you are generally supported within custom functions too. And so another thing I kind of wanted to show was a little bit about how your journey of doing analysis in Excel can be transformed and augmented if you're an end user by making use of data types. So this was for a demo that we actually built at Ignite, but historically speaking, you'll notice that generally people have flat tabular data. So you've got a whole bunch of columns with rows in them, and that's how you represent your data. With something like data types, you can actually package that up into one singular entity. And again, functions are another good way of possibly creating these as well as maybe building your UI. But in this case, you'll actually watch, it was actually Phoebe who created this demo. You'll watch her kind of create her own custom function and then pass in a whole bunch of information. And then from this custom function, we're actually able to build those structures that you can kind of see listed here. And again, there's a picture of that array value one that I was mentioning. So I think it's pretty slick because it just kind of shows you all the information at a, at a really brief moment's notice. And if you want to extract any individual value, the interactions are just kind of built in. So it's as simple as a one click. And of course, this is kind of what your data would probably look like after you're done converting all of those into their individual types, as opposed to before where you kind of had to do it all on your own and you really didn't have associated data contained with a singular package. So the last thing I'm going to leave with today is a quick demo. We've added some additional metadata to the data types in particular. And so I'm going to show you how we've added data types that allow you to set some card specific properties, because you might have noticed that the card layouts don't look like some of the other ones that you can see, for example, on the Wolfram side. And then there's also the ability to hide individual fields from the client. And I'll show some of that too. So I'm actually going to flip over to Excel, where I've got a pre-curated demo, and I'm going to be making use of a tool that we've built today to kind of show you a little bit about how this structure works. Really quick about this tool, what it does is it allows me to set and clear data types and kind of look at all of that information that's contained within there and modify it. So that's what I'll be using today. So first thing is just a general look at the structure. So I've created a fake entity here. It's meant to be of myself and just purely illustrative. But you can see one of the first things that might jump out to you is the additional card sections that we have here. So before you didn't have those card sections and everything was just kind of a flat list and laid out. And you also couldn't organize the individual properties. And I'll talk a little bit about that too. But you can see I've got some general information here about my favorite stuff and then maybe some contact information. Now, one of the things I can do is this profile picture here. This is actually shown in line, and really I want that to be at the top, and that's a field that we've introduced under a new card layout property that's called the hero image. So what I'll do in this case is I'm just going to click this button to make that profile the actual main image. Oh, and the other thing to mention that I forgot to, sorry, was the sub-label there. You'll notice that it says profile and then there's this dot and it says picture. Every single field also has the addition of something we call the sub-label that you can set to. But anyway, I want to make this the main image. So what I'll do is I'll set this, and don't mind the rendering issue I'm having today. I've got my own special builds of Excel, and so I've got bugs that come with that. But the thing to notice is that that image is now actually located at the top of the card as opposed to in line where it was before, which in our opinion gives a much richer experience and kind of looks a lot better in my opinion than just kind of in line or some of the other ways you might do it. One of the other things that we changed was the ability to order the fields within the card. So if you've tried this API out before, you might have noticed that we always sort things alphabetically. Well, we have another field. You can actually change the structure of it. So in this case, let's say I want to make the animal, my favorite animal is one of the top properties. So I just click that button, it'll move it to the top. Now, if I set that data again, we should see the animals listed. So again, all of this is going to be inside the JSON structure, which I have here. And in particular, that's going to be under something we call the card layout. And so we've added a sections entry. And so within these objects, you can kind of see how things are differently laid out. And in particular, there's something we call the properties. And this shows, this is a one-to-one correspondence with all those fields and tells the card how to lay that stuff out. Now, the last thing I'm going to demo is some of the interactions I said about setting metadata to hide things. So for example, you might be doing something like pulling a whole bunch of information from a database, and there's information that you might want available to you as you're debugging, but you don't necessarily want to make available to the end user. You still want it in the payload, but you don't want it to be readily accessible. So that's where these set of fields are going to come in. The first one is one called card view. So if I uncheck this and hit set again, you'll notice that I can actually hide that field from card view. So it won't display in the card view. But if I were to go over here and use dot notation, it's still available and accessible if I wanted to extract it into the grid. But let's say you don't want that to be extractable to the grid. Or let's say you don't want it to autocomplete. You still want it to be there, again, for maybe debugging purposes, but you don't want anyone to really know what the name of that field is. So I can quickly click set again. Oops, and I set the wrong cell, so I'll just move over to this one. Notice that I don't have it listed here, but if I actually call this, it'll still be extractable. And then, of course, the final thing is you can also remove it from dot notation altogether. So this action, once I click that, we should actually see me now get a pound field error because Excel's not going to allow that to be extracted to the grid. It's still contained in there, but it's not going to be accessible to the end user shown in the UI or anything. So one other thing to mention is that within ScriptLab, I know that's a place where we offer a lot of really great examples and tutorials on how to get started with a lot of the APIs. We've actually got some that are going to be coming out soon, so look out within the client to kind of see those. And the last thing I'll leave with before I hand it over to, I think, Phoebe, is that one of the things we're actively doing is looking for new partners to kind of collaborate with who want to make use of these APIs. And in particular, we're trying to have a big announcement at Build in May if possible. And so what we want to be able to do is highlight customer stories and build out some cool demos of stuff you guys think are interesting or useful to your given scenarios. And of course, we're also actively looking for feedback. So when you make use of these APIs, since they aren't just currently in preview right now, we want to make sure that we're building the right thing and that we're building out new APIs to enable any scenarios that you might have need for. So that kind of covers everything I had today, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, Chris. That was really great to see. It's really cool to see how, we're moving from, just having simple data types to now you can work with really complex data types from your add-ins. I was just curious, do you want folks to drop an email or something if they want to connect with you in the chat, or because you mentioned you want to connect with some folks?
Yeah, the email is probably the best way. My email is chgross@microsoft.com. So if you want to send me an email, go for it. But yeah, we're looking for any sort of feedback or communications, and happy to set up calls and talk about things with any of the partners today.
Okay, very cool. All right. So next up is Phoebe.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David, and thank you, Chris. And hello, everyone. This is Phoebe Yuan from Office Platform team. And actually, I'm located in Beijing. Next section, I'd like to share the latest updates on new Word APIs. And this time, we've added Word APIs around several areas, mainly targeting at improving the capabilities in citation management and content insertion scenarios. And all of these APIs will be in preview in Word Online. First, covering comments, track changes, and fields. The comments and track changes APIs are already available in Word Online in preview. And the fields APIs are still in rolling out process and will be available in preview very, very soon. So if you would like to have a try, please remember to add the change requirement set to the Word API Online, because these are available only for Word Online so far. Okay, now let's go to even more details of these APIs. The first set of APIs are comments related. We've provided rich text format supporting comments, so you can set rich text as bold, italics, underline, and etc. It will be very straightforward and easy to manage all of the rich formatting inside the comments. We also provide comment ID, so each comment can be monitored in a Word document very smoothly. You can refer to the table at the right hand for the more details. And next, I'd like to show a small demo made of GIF, and also to save some of the bandwidth. And also, I took the snapshot from ScriptLab to give you a kind of a concept of how straightforward these APIs are. And there are two small scenarios in this demo. One is inserting text with bold font, and the other is to add hyperlinks into the comments. So you can have more control in the comments text, just like the normal text inside a Word document through these APIs. Okay, these are the APIs for the comments with rich text and ID. The next set of APIs are around track changes. So track changes is the feature on building Word that keeps track of all of the edits made to the documents and will benefit people when they are doing the reviewing and let people to make comments based on these track changes results. In Word, this is a very, very popular feature when reviewing document. And previously, we got continuous feedback and asks around enabling these capabilities through JS APIs. So today, we are very happy to announce that these APIs are actually available in preview mode for Word Online. So with track changes, you can set different track changes mode to the document, and you can also check the original contents before reviewing and the reviewed contents as well. And next, let me also show you a small demo on this. You can simply set the track changes mode with 3 different values, which are the off, just mine, and for everyone, just like you can do in the UI, in the Word UI. And sorry, there are too many buttons here in my demo, but just want to show you that besides setting the modes, you can also check the status of the document for the track changes. And the last few buttons, printing related, just want to show you, okay, you can check the values before the track changes, and also the original value in our case is, you can see the small column there, which is deleted by someone. So with all these APIs available, we hope that for like document reviewing, we can enrich the scenarios for our add-ins. The next part, I like to show you the set of APIs around the fields object. Now the fields APIs are still in the rolling out process, and it's very likely to be in place for preview like in 1 or 1.5 months. Because in Word Online, the fields feature is not available yet. So our first scenario is to enable getting fields object created by Windows or Mac. So please stay tuned for these APIs, and they are coming on the way. Okay, I think I've covered all of the new APIs already in preview and which are in the way to preview. So please do have a try of these new APIs and let us know any feedback you have before we finally GA them. And currently, we are also busy preparing the documentation, and will be published quite soon. So please check our docs website for more details on these APIs, which will cover more samples there. Okay, and I think that's the update from the Word side. Any questions in this? And if you have more questions around APIs, especially after you try this, I also leave my email here in the chat, so you can contact me directly. Okay, thank you. Back to you, David.
All right, thank you, Phoebe. It's really cool seeing all those APIs coming along for Word. Next up is Juan.
Yep.
Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. Thank you very much for staying so late. I know it's late in China right now, so thank you very much for sharing this update. Hello, everyone. It's Juan Balmori here. I'm going to give you an update for Outlook Addins and the Outlook REST v2 decommission. What's going to be the plan here? So what's going to happen for all Outlook developers here in the community call or watching on demand? Basically, as you probably already heard, on November 30th this year, the Outlook REST v2 endpoint will be decommissioned. So basically, I am adding just a sample snippet here on this slide so that you can identify that if you are using the get callback token API with the isRest parameter equals true, that means that this call event. I mean, I'm going to tell you how the decommission is going to be about, but this at some point is going to stop working. No, so this impacts both Exchange Online mostly, but you're in Exchange on-prem on a hybrid configuration only. 100% on-prem, the rest is not available. But on-prem and hybrid, you'll have also this problem. So the scenarios impacted is obviously if you want to use the REST APIs as part of your Outlook add-in, this is no longer going to be available. I have specific areas of the API that will get impacted, but the bottom line is the REST APIs are not going to work anymore, and then the delegate scenarios also have a couple of APIs that are using REST calls to do operations on behalf of the owner of the folder. That's also, we'll have an alternative for that. So basically, that's the problem that we have right now. So let's go a little bit more into detail about the impact, because I mean, when we were announcing this, the commission, one big concern that I had and I shared with the team who is owning this product is that we really don't want to break our Addins, right? It's like we should never do that. So the good news here for everybody that is using this today is that we are going to be granting exceptions for this decommission for all Addins who are using the REST endpoint before the decommission date, before November. So basically, if you have an Addin today that is using the REST endpoint, you will still be able to using the REST endpoint until the end of support of Office 2019, which happens to be October 14th, 2025. So basically, you have a few more years, to move your Addin to alternatives, which is in this case the graph, no? I think that's a natural progression of things here. No, the problem is that Addins created after the decommission date. So we have a way today of knowing what Addins are using, the REST endpoints. So we'll have this list of Addins by ID. But if your Addin is created after the decommission date, then you will not be able to use the REST service. No, so you need to move to either depending on what your operations you're doing to the graph or to AWS instead. So this is all good news for everybody who is using the APIs today. Does the extension for Addins apply only to? No, this is for all Addins. All Addins that are using the REST endpoints are not necessarily just coming from the store. Are also Addins that are privately released are going to grant this exception as well. So good question, Michael. So now the other thing that I want to comment here is, this is more detail about exactly what's impacted, no? So we have all these APIs, and I'm going to go one by one telling you what's the story here. So basically, obviously, when the get callback token async method with the isREST option is impacted, of course. What's going to happen here? This is basically the API you use to get the REST compatible token. Obviously, if you use the property isREST, you get a REST compatible token. Otherwise, you get an AWS compatible token. So this API is going to fail for new Addin. For new Addins, it's going to fail. So basically, the recommendation here is to use the graph as an alternative. No, so we recently shipped the SSO feature, and in fact, I think David here himself produced a few examples on how to use the single sign-on and get a graph compatible token, so that your Addins use the graph instead. Now I got I don't own the REST endpoints, but what I've learned from that team is that we have now 100% compatibility between the REST endpoint and the graph endpoint. So that means that everything that you can do with the REST endpoint today is also doable with the graph. Of course, I mean, I don't know, maybe there are a few exceptions here. At this point, one of the call to actions that I have for our community is to just let me know if that's not the case, so that we can prioritize filling up those gaps. And of course, if you're using AWS, so AWS is, at this moment is that we don't have any concrete plans to deprecate. So it can be also an alternative to the graph, no? In case, so the recommendation here is try to use the graph first, use the single sign-on methods to get those graph compatible tokens, and use the graph, And the documentation here is very extensive, by the way. So REST version, obviously this API is going to become basically obsolete. We will not be able to know the REST version anymore. We're going to keep the conversion IDs. So we have a few APIs to convert to REST ID and convert to AWS ID, as we think that these APIs might be still useful for the graph in case you need to supply an ID. And finally, the shared properties target get REST URL, which basically means it's API that you use to get the URL to make the REST call on behalf of the owner of a folder. Here we also need to have a graph alternative. We are using this for this is very relevant for the delegate scenario. All right, so is there a way to check if a certain ID is in your extension list? Atso is asking. Yes, absolutely. So please follow up with me offline. And I was getting a list of all these add-ins this week, in fact. so that if you can actually send me an email, we can verify that your add-in is in this list. I will send you my contact in a second. All right, so also in addition to this, there manifest change and enterprise install. Michael, there's extension for add-ins, apply to add-ins, apply in the store. Yes. It's only on store deployed add-ins. No, again, this is not only for store deployed add-ins, enterprise deployed add-ins will also work. In addition to this, is this a manifest change? No, there are no manifest changes. So there are no manifest changes here. Basically, the way that this is going, I mean, we still are thinking how we're going to do it. If we are going to fail the calls immediately, or if we are going to allow them and verify that this was not an add-in before November, and you know, contact the developers and make sure that they make the move. No, but there are no manifest change associated with this. This is going to be it's all fixed server side. That's my hope at this point. All right, so let's move on. So the bottom line here. So my recommendation for everybody is to move to the graph as soon as you can. This is something that that Microsoft is moving strategically, that our customers are asking. You know, I know many big and small and huge ISVs who actually their customers are asking them to stop using REST, to start using AWS and go to a more controlled scope level, permission settings. No, this is about providing more granular security of operations. So this is the right move. So please make sure to move to the graph. For that, obviously, you need to be checking if we have the requirement set identity 1.3. So the easiest way to implement a call to the graph is to use SSO. Fortunately, that was shipped, I think, just a couple of years ago with the identity 1.3 API. So if during the context of activation of your add-in, the identity 1.3 is available, it means that SSO is available, single sign-on is available in that environment. So basically, you can do the handshake, the SSO handshakes, and get a graph compatible token and make the graph calls. Now, remember that the graph calls, the part that was created for SSO is that the admin needs to deploy the add-in within the organization, and the consent happens at deployment time. So the admin is the one who is in advance accepting, the consents of the graph scopes that your admin requires. So the flow that which is most of the flow of Office add-ins, the flow that requires your add-in to be deployed from an admin perspective is fully. I mean, the user is not gonna get any dialogues or anything like that. It's going to be pre-consented by the admin. On the other hand, if the user goes directly, because you will have to pop, the consent messages to the user so they can use it. AWS. I mean, if the requirement set 1.3 is not available, basically, the fallback is to use AWS. Remember that AWS is, in the context of Outlook add-ins doesn't mean that you can call anything, right? It's limited to the calls that are in this link that I am showing you here. I mean, most add-ins are okay using what the functionalities that are listed in this link, and you should be okay. Call to action for everybody. Do let us know if you find gaps in the graph endpoint. So I think the team feel confident that that's the case, but I want to hear from you guys. If you find anything that is not working as you expect, absolutely let me know, and we can work with the rest team. And that's what I have for today. I think there are a few questions here on the chat that I'm going to answer. Is there any chance to, well, this Graham will follow up with that question offline. I was referring to if the update of the app manifest and redeploy, does that reset the REST compatibility? If done, yes. Like if you change the ID by which your add-in is making the call, you're going to fall into the new add-in category. So you need to be careful with that. Eric Legold. Eric, how are you? Get on the graph. Yes. I'm not sure why people are laughing about this comment, but I would just put like. Will the detection of pre-existing IDs be tied to a manifest ID? No, it's not tied to a manifest ID. So we know there's a token that is passed on the call that we identify that it's coming from an add-in, and from there we can identify which add-in specifically is making the call. So it's not a manifest change. It's not the idea of the manifest. Could we have a demo of a basic outlook adding using the graph in the future? I think this already exists, Pinakin. David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we do have a patterns and practice that is talking us exactly about this, how to do an SSO authentication and then make a graph call. We'll make sure that you guys have all these documents. So, absolutely. So
I put a link to that sample. It kind of floated up higher in the chat, but there's a link to it if you want to look at it.
Yeah, that example is basically what you need to do. But of course, this is just the first interaction that we have for the community. The first time we're talking about this with you guys. Expect, we're going to be blogging about this. We're going to be providing more documentation, so that you're ready. I think we are right on time. You don't need to worry again if your Addin is being used today. So exception will be granted. All right, so I think there are no more reserved questions here. But again, move to the graph, guys. That's my advice here. And thank you very much. David?
All right, thank you, Juan. This is really great news, I think. Hopefully that answered a lot of people's questions that they've had, because I know folks have been asking about this for a few months. So very cool.
I have other questions from Mike. We have a client using Outlook 2019 volume licensing. Yes, he's asking that it's using Internet Explorer as the host. Is there any intention to update this to support Edge, Chromium, blah, blah, blah? Yes, Mike. Unfortunately, if you install the latest Office monthly subscription or semi-annual channel, the engine that you will get in Win32 is a Chromium-based engine, a WebView 2 engine. Unfortunately, 2019 still shipped with the Internet Explorer one. So those customers, if they are in a perpetual license, they're still going to be on that browser. They need to update to latest, so they get an Edge or /Chromium build. Graham is asking if there are any plans to allow change of appointment organizer. Yes, we have it on the backlog, Graham, but we're still not yet executing on it. Okay. What is Internet Explorer you speak of? Obras or real? So Internet Explorer. So when which actually web add-ins are a web page that is hosted inside of Office. She's asking about Internet Explorer with like 3 question marks. So basically, what we are doing in the clients is that we are loading a web browser engine, and then we are loading the add-in in that engine. And when we shipped the product in Office 2013, many years ago, the only browser available was Internet Explorer. So that's what we did. We used that one. And then as new browsers and new technologies evolved, we, of course, adopted the new browsers, but that depends on the Office installation that you have. So if you're in the latest versions, you should get WebView 2, a Chromium-based engine as a browser. That's what I mean by Internet Explorer on the Win32 client. Remember that Internet Explorer is no longer supported for the web clients. So web clients is a different story. It's the browser where you're loading the Outlook at. Okay. There's an admin option to force. No, Martin, I think WebView 2 is going to be the by default browser. So you don't need to have any administrative. The only administrative way that you can do to force it is to upgrade Office, no? But anyways. All right. So I think I went through all the questions. Of course, if you have any other questions offline, I'm more than happy to go through them. I think in general, these are good news. We were able to kind of give more time for folks who are having Addins today. Thank you very much. David?
All right. Thank you, Juan. Okay, so our community spotlight of the month. Just want to say thank you to Maarten van Stam, who's been helping with PRs and information on GitHub samples that we have for Office add-ins. If you want to be mentioned in the community spotlight, and you can help us out at the github.com/officedevs/pnp-office add-ins repo, which is where, I need to update that. That name changed. That'll still work. It'll redirect, but it's actually office-add-in-samples is the correct name of it now. And then also you can sign up for the recognition program. There's a link there for that to become a M365 Patterns and Practices community contributor. So thank you, Maarten. And moving on. So we had some questions come in on the forum, which We'll have a link to that on the last slide if people have questions for the next call. So this is where folks can ask a question in advance, and I reach out to the team and work to get answers to these. The first one that came in is, the question was, I wanted to ask if I could do a broader overview on how to go manage an Office add-in with multiple task panels. In my case, I'm creating an Excel add-in with 2 task panels. My goal is to use the same file HTML and only change the content of the file based on the URL routing using React-router.dom. So the answer here is you could probably do this by passing a parameter in the URL request. For example, you could do index.html page 1 and index.html page 2. And then when the page loads, you can use that parameter to render the appropriate UI. And you can also put these parameters in the manifest file or wherever else you might need them to specify which task pane you want to be loading. Now, I wasn't sure when I read this question if you wanted to see a demo of this on the call. So if that's the case, just let me know in the chat if this is something you'd want to see, like a demo of working with multiple task panes or something like that. We can certainly put something like that together. I don't think we've done that in the past. Then on to the next question, asking when the Shapes API, which is currently in preview for PowerPoint, when's that going to go live? So I've reached out to the team on that, and I don't have an answer yet, but once we post the blog summary of this call, which generally goes out a few days from now, usually like early next week, we'll put the answer in there. So we'll have some kind of ETA. And then the next question, we're getting an increased number of reports from customers that are add-in sporadically disappears from the ribbon in Word, and is this a known issue? So thanks for asking that. We're sorry to hear that this is happening, and we want to dig into it some more. So if you could create a GitHub issue at our office-js repo on Office Dev, we can follow up with you there. So we need more information, like if this is specific to a platform, or is it happening on all the platforms? Is it only for centrally deployed add-ins, or is it user deployed? Is it specific to a single app or all apps? So anyway, if we can get some more information, we can definitely help diagnose what's going on there. So just go to officedev/office-js on github.com. Next question, are there any updates on Word.js APIs to compare 2 Word documents programmatically? Something similar to the document.compare method, but for the JS API. Thank you. Thanks for that question. Right now, we don't have anything in the works on that, but it would be great to learn more about the scenario. So what you can do is please submit a suggestion at this long URL, which is the, and we'll post this in the blog too, so you have the link for that. That's the Microsoft Ideas site, and where you can make suggestions and people can vote suggestions up if they want to see those things built out as features in future releases. So just give us some more details about the scenario on that, and that'd be super helpful. We can look into that for planning purposes down the road, maybe. So next question. Oh, so back on the December call for the Office Addins community call, there was an answer. Oh, I should preface this. I think there were 2 questions that came in that were kind of the same thing. The first question was like, hey, is Outlook on mobile going to be supported? And then this question came in on the forum. I assumed it was probably the same person saying, oh, I found out it is supported. And then this was like a follow-up. So the answer is that Outlook on mobile is supported for event-based add-ins first, and then smart alerts later. This is very good news. Our customers are asking for a mobile add-in that will confirm the content when sent. Just to confirm, do you plan to introduce only smart alerts in Outlook mobile and not the on-send feature? Also, will smart alerts be part of your 2022 Q2 goals? We're very excited about getting that working by events in Outlook mobile. Thank you. So yeah, thanks for that question. I don't know if Juan, if you're still on the call, is this a question you want to jump into?
Yes, absolutely. So this is absolutely on the backlog. I mean, mobile first. So the mobile team, I think it's first going to focus on the event-based add-ins. So we're going to be working on the Compose event. And I think, I mean, we're just wrapping up some other feature we are finishing in mobile. And no later than second quarter of this year, we're going to start implementing the event-based part. So event-based is absolutely coming to mobile, and soon after smart alerts. Yeah, I cannot commit to a specific date, folks, but it's yes, this is a top request from our community, and we are working on it.
Cool, that's good to know. Thank you, Juan, for jumping in on that question. And moving on to another question. You're asking if there's any updates to this item. This is a link out to the Ideas site, and it's was a suggestion to implement a consistent save and close API methods across Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And this question's been around for a long time. It was originally on User Voice. We had some discussion on it about a little over a year ago on one of the calls. So we know this has been around, and right now there aren't any plans around doing any updates to these particular APIs. But we'd love to connect with you to learn more about this scenario, because we know it keeps coming up. So what I will do is I'll just put my email here in the chat real quick. And if you want to follow up with me about the save close APIs, I can put you in touch with the right folks on that. So thanks for asking that question. Definitely follow up with me, and I can put you in touch with the team to try to work on finding out more information about how we can help there. Okay, so if there's any questions, that's into the Q&A. So if there's any questions we didn't get to today, or I go back through the chat afterwards, and I'll find anything that didn't get answered and put it into the blog and reach out to the right folks to get the answers to those. So keep an eye out for that over the next few days. Now, if you're new to Office Add-ins, you can go to our documentation at aka.ms/office-add-ins-docs. And there are a series of 5-minute quick starts there that you can use to build a quick start in Excel or Outlook or wherever, and just kind of get started and looking at things. You can also, if you're looking to just do automation of like Excel tasks, you can go check out Office Scripts. There's aka.ms/office-scripts-docs. Some additional developer resources for folks, as always, there is the Microsoft 365 Developer Program, which gives you a free tenant for developing and testing your add-ins. I use this all the time for working on building samples and such, or just trying out ideas. So definitely take a look at that if you don't have it. There's also Script Lab, which is an add-in that you can use to run snippets of code and just try it out without the trouble of having to set up a whole developer environment. So there's a link there if you want to download that and try it. And again, our Office Add-ins documentation. If you want to engage with us, if you have technical questions about the Office JavaScript API, or if you have technical questions about Office Add-ins in general, there's 2 links there that go to our Q&A site for asking questions. We also have, if you have questions for the developer community at large, you can go to Stack Overflow, and the tags are listed there for Office and Outlook and so on, depending on which area you have a question in. If you find what looks like a bug, some kind of product bug, you can go to our GitHub Office-JS repo and raise an issue there, and we'll follow up with you. And any feature requests and ideas, things you want to see developed, go out to M365dev-suggestions, and you can create a suggestion along with the scenario and information about it and how it would be helpful, and folks can upvote that. And we take a look at those as we're doing planning to look into things to build for you. And you can always send a smile or frown from inside Office. This isn't the only community call, of course. We have many Microsoft 365 developer community calls. So here's some links to those if you want to join these other calls and you're interested in some of this information. There's the Microsoft 365 platform call, which is all things Microsoft 365. There's also calls for adaptive cards, Microsoft Identity Platform, and so on. So definitely go check these out if you're interested. And finally, just say thank you to everyone. Thank you to our presenters for presenting, and thanks for everyone for attending and listening and learning. The recording of this call will be available in 24 hours out on the Microsoft 365 community YouTube channel, and there's a link there for that channel. You can also follow us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev or at M365PNP. The next call will be March 9th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So there's a link there to get the invite for that. If you want to know what the agenda is, there's a link there for the agenda, and I generally have that up about a week before the call. So that's where you can kind of keep an eye on what's coming up. And you can also submit questions. There's the link to the Office Add-ins form if you have questions you want to see answered on that call, and I'll take those up in the Q&A section in the next presentation. So with that said, thank you again, everyone, and we will see you on the next call.